Oh, my love, he's gone. I promise I'll be strong for you.
The rain began early that morning, tapping softly against the church windows as people slowly gathered for the funeral. The quiet town had not seen such a large crowd in years. Black umbrellas filled the small courtyard, and whispered conversations floated through the cold air. Everyone had come to pay their respects to Daniel Carter, a respected man whose sudden passing had shocked the entire community. But beneath the sorrow and sympathy, there was a strange tension among the people who stood there waiting. Inside the church, candles flickered gently beside the polished wooden coffin. The scent of flowers filled the room, roses and lilies carefully arranged around the altar. Daniel's wife, Melissa, sat in the front row dressed in black, her face pale and distant. In her arms, she held a small baby wrapped in a white blanket. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the grief surrounding him. People glanced at Melissa with sympathy as they passed by. Many whispered about how tragic it was that the baby would grow up without ever knowing his father. Daniel had always dreamed of becoming a father, and when Melissa announced her pregnancy months ago, he had been overjoyed. The entire town had shared in that happiness. But not everyone in the room believed the story was so simple. At the back of the church stood a man who hadn't been seen in town for years. His name was Aaron Blake. He remained near the door, silent and still, his eyes fixed on the baby in Melissa's arms. Few people recognized him at first, but those who did exchanged uneasy looks. Aaron had been Melissa's childhood sweetheart long before she married Daniel. Their relationship had once been the talk of the town. They had grown up together, attended the same school, and spent nearly every day side by side. Everyone believed they would eventually marry. But something had happened years ago that caused their sudden separation. Soon after, Melissa had left town for college, and Aaron had disappeared not long after. When Melissa returned years later with Daniel, people assumed her past was long behind her. The funeral service began with quiet music played on the church piano. The pastor spoke gently about Daniel's kindness, his generosity, and the way he had always helped others without expecting anything in return. Friends shared memories of fishing trips, community events, and late-night conversations that revealed Daniel's warm heart. Melissa listened silently, her eyes fixed on the floor. The baby stirred in her arms and let out a soft cry, breaking the stillness. She rocked him gently until he fell quiet again. For a moment, several people noticed how closely the child's features resembled someone else. Whispers slowly began spreading through the back rows. Aaron remained by the door, his expression tense. He had not planned to attend the funeral, but something had drawn him back to town after hearing the news of Daniel's death. The moment he saw the baby, something inside him shifted. There was a familiarity in the child's face that he couldn't ignore. Melissa felt the weight of the room pressing against her as the service continued. Every glance, every whisper seemed louder than the pastor's voice. She had hoped the funeral would pass quietly, but she could feel the truth hovering in the air like a storm waiting to break. Years earlier, long before Daniel entered her life, she and Aaron had shared a love that felt unbreakable. They had dreamed of building a life together, leaving the small town and exploring the world. But life rarely follows the plans made by young hearts. A misunderstanding had torn them apart. Neither of them had fought to fix it. Pride and pain pushed them in different directions, leaving their story unfinished. Time passed. Melissa moved forward, eventually meeting Daniel during her time in the city. Daniel was kind, stable, and deeply devoted to her. He gave her the security she thought she needed after the heartbreak she had experienced. When they married, the town celebrated their union. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But some memories never truly fade. Months before Daniel's death, Melissa had returned to town briefly to visit her parents. It was during that visit that she unexpectedly ran into Aaron again. The meeting was completely accidental, yet the emotions that resurfaced were anything but simple. Years of silence collapsed into a single conversation. They talked for hours that evening, walking through familiar streets that still held pieces of their past. Old feelings returned with surprising intensity, leaving both of them shaken by the encounter. It was a moment neither of them fully understood. When they parted ways that night, Melissa believed it would be the last time she saw him. Shortly after returning home to Daniel, she discovered she was pregnant. Daniel was overwhelmed with joy when he heard the news. He immediately began planning the future, talking about baby names, building a nursery, and imagining the life they would share as a family. Melissa tried to share his happiness, but deep inside she carried a question she was afraid to face. As the months passed, Daniel never noticed the quiet fear growing within her. He loved the unborn child with complete certainty. Back in the church, the pastor finished his final prayer. People began lining up to offer their condolences to Melissa before leaving. One by one they approached her, speaking softly and placing comforting hands on her shoulder. When Aaron finally stepped forward, the room seemed to grow colder. Melissa looked up and froze the moment she saw him standing there. It had been months since their last meeting, yet the emotions returned instantly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The baby stirred again in her arms. Aaron glanced down at the child, his eyes filled with confusion and something deeper, recognition. Melissa felt her heart racing as she watched him studying the baby's face. Neither of them needed to say the words out loud. Some truths revealed themselves without explanation. Aaron slowly stepped back, his expression shaken by the realization forming in his mind. Around them, people pretended not to notice, but the tension had already begun spreading through the room. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. Melissa held the baby closer, her thoughts spinning between grief, fear, and the consequences she knew were coming. Daniel was gone, but the secrets she carried had not been buried with him. For the first time since the funeral began, she allowed herself to look directly at Aaron again. His eyes held questions that only she could answer. And in that silent moment between them, both understood that the past they had tried to leave behind was about to return in ways neither of them had expected. The baby opened his eyes briefly, staring up at the dim church lights. Unaware that his existence had already begun to change the lives of everyone in that room.